Hey, Kentucky, this is Mary Jo Perino. Some lawmakers confront the Beshear administration over the pandemic. Some lawyers say Breonna Taylor's killing wasn't murder, and the SEC will have a 10-game conference-only schedule. All that and more is next on Hey, Kentucky. Welcome to Hey Kentucky, along with Jennifer Palumbo. We've got some big football news to get to tonight.
Yes.
There will be football.
We're going to have football, kind of.
Kind of, and it'll be later. We're going to get to that in just a second, but let's start with this. Some state lawmakers are expressing frustration about the way the Beshear administration is handling emergency orders regarding COVID-19. They sounded off during a hearing in Frankfurt yesterday, saying they haven't had access to key players during the pandemic, including Public Health Commissioner Dr. Stephen Stack. Committee co-chair Senator Ralph Alvarado criticized the Beshear administration for a lack of working relationship with the legislature.
But I suppose this has become the hallmark of the new tone in this administration, and that tone is a dial tone. And I want to make sure that people understand out there that we're not getting any information.
Members of the Beshear administration were on hand for the hearing, but Alvarado made it clear he wanted Dr. Stack himself. The Secretary of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services told lawmakers that they're following guidance from the White House, pointing to the recent visit from Dr. Deborah Birx, who is part of the Trump administration. And Jennifer, it seems like no matter who's in charge, what party, whatever, we're just going to always argue about the other one. That's what this feels like to me.
It does, and the bottom line is we're in the middle of a pandemic. The governor and Dr. Stack are very, very busy right now. You know, we have to trust in what they're doing, and if the legislature has an issue with what he's doing, they can take it to the Attorney General. We've seen already he's not, doesn't have a problem with filing lawsuits and taking it to court. But in the meantime, and the governor probably looks at it and says, what is, I have to do this anyway. So all they're going to do is probably complain about it, and it's probably, not a lose-lose situation.
It is, and it was the same way in the Bevin administration. It's the same way in all administrations. It's so partisan. It drives me insane. All right, state leaders say they are working to control coronavirus outbreaks in multiple prisons. Yesterday, the governor said there are 379 active cases in inmates, 52 in staff, and 8 deaths in state facilities. The governor says the state is following the model set by Green River Correctional Facility, which was able to control an outbreak by testing inmates and separating them based on their test results and vulnerability to the virus. Officials say they're also keeping a close eye on the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women and Kentucky State Reformatory in Oldham County. But there are challenges, like not having proper space for separating inmates.
Some of our institutions means that we have to do that in wings. And that's not as good as separate buildings, but still we're using that overall, get everybody tested, sort them out, do the monitoring, and we believe it can and will stabilize once we go through that.
The state also announced 700 additional inmates are being considered for release during the pandemic. About 1,200 nonviolent, non-sexual offenders have already been released. And Jennifer, I think that there's probably some people that we can send to home release.
Yes, and they said that with those 1,200, that there were very few instances where they were, rearrested, going back out and recommitting crimes. So if they're looking at it from a standpoint, they're almost to the end of their sentence, and they also have underlying health conditions, and they can do this in a way that is safe and without the sex or the violent crime offenders, then I think it is definitely worth considering since they've already done it already.
Totally agree. Now, the latest on the case that has helped spur protests in Louisville and across the country. That's a new TV ad from a women's advocacy group pushing for action on the Breonna Taylor case. It's one of the many voices doing so, including 10 million people who have signed a petition at change.org seeking charges against LMPD Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, Officer Miles Cosgrove, and ex-officer Brent Hakeson. Oprah Winfrey is one of the latest celebrities on that list calling for justice, but not everyone thinks the officer should face murder or manslaughter charges in the March killing. 7 experienced Louisville defense lawyers who are not involved in the case, 3 of whom are black, say police had a legal right to defend themselves once Taylor's boyfriend shot at them. And Jennifer, I'm going to go ahead and say this. This is just my belief. George Zimmerman believed he had a right as well to protect himself. That was decided by a jury. So why can we not charge these folks and have a jury decide?
Exactly. And why has it taken so long for just any kind of conclusion? The Attorney General Daniel Cameron said he doesn't have a timetable. They have got to figure out something because these protests will continue with nothing being decided.
Absolutely. And he said it doesn't matter what Oprah or Beyonce say, and I get that, but there still has to be forward momentum that we need to hear about. All right, let's do this thing with college football. Let's turn to the 2020 season. Breaking news this afternoon as the SEC announced it will do a 10-game conference-only schedule that begins September 26th. This is according to several media outlets now. The ACC had approved a 10-game conference-only schedule and one non-conference opponent for this fall, that was done yesterday, which would have meant the UK Louisville game could have still gone on. Now with the SEC announcing this today, we can assume that the Louisville Kentucky game is off the table for this year. This is crazy. It's an
constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a change from just 3 weeks ago when they said 8 or 9 games and 1 non-conference. That was the SEC consensus. So now we have this. The SEC presidents have accepted it. It looks like this is what we're going to get. But the season starting September 26th, I think, is interesting, don't you?
I do. I do think it's going to give us time in the South to get our acts together. But I wish that all of the conferences would have kind of worked in alignment together, or, as you and I discussed off camera, the NCAA doing something to make it more of a streamlined scheduling.
Once again, Mark Emmert, NCAA president, just dropping the ball again and again. And no guidance from the top.
Yep, that's what happens. But September 26th, we got a date. All right, here we go. Now to our weekly feature on Hey Kentucky. What's the Beef? Sponsored by the Kentucky Beef Council. A federal appeals court has restored a major part of Ashley Judd's lawsuit against Harvey Weinstein, finding that the producer had power over the actress, which should make her able to sue under a California sexual harassment law. The Ashland native filed the lawsuit in 2018, alleging that in a meeting at a Beverly Hills hotel, the producer tried to coerce her to watch him shower and give him a massage, then smeared her in Hollywood as a nightmare to work with after she rejected him. And that's tonight's edition of What's the Beef? Coming up next on Hey Kentucky, I'll sit down with Julian Tackett, the commissioner of the KHSAA, to discuss fall sports, what they will look like, and who can watch them. That's next.